I'll tell the government right now, tell you right now if you're listening, NSA, CIA, I'm available, okay? If you show me all the real wreckage, I swear to God, I will make fun of that crap to the end of time. I'll make up stories. I'll lie to my mother. I don't care. You show me a UFO, I'll lie to my mother. So when you see these crisscross patterns across the sky, what do you believe is happening?
See this square in the clouds?
What do you believe is happening?
See this square in the clouds with the ice crystal leaping up? And they did not let me answer that question. Joe posed the question, and now we've jump cut to another conversation. So in editing, what Joe has left, he's left a question dangling, cut. And now they've brought in my answer, my reply from a different question. How to mold the story in editing.
You believe that there's some sort of technology that's controlling the weather?
Sure. They want to claim climate change or carbon dioxide, but that doesn't make sense. It just doesn't wash. So there has to be some other delta, some other data, some other change that they're not considering. And in my opinion, it's zombie storms. Seriously. And in my opinion, it's zombie storms. Seriously. Another edit. I would have never said zombie storms in that thing. In fact, in our discussions before I flew to Burbank, the producer kept bringing up zombie storms, and I'm like, WTF, what are you talking about with zombie storms? There is no such thing. And so they're editing to try to get that zombie storms, because if you're going to create this headline for a piece or a segment, you need something. Man versus man, or brother versus brother, or zombie storm, something that is of high interest or is sensational, and that's what they're doing with sound editing. Zombie storms? Seriously, that's all in editing. That's a lie. I never said it in that sequence. And in my opinion, it's global weather engineering, geoengineering. And in my opinion, it's global weather engineering, geoengineering. What else is there out there that they have not been forthright about? And that, I believe, is HAARP.
Really?
Seriously. And that, I believe, is HAARP.
Really?
Not. Seriously. There's a hard stop with that voice and to where I begin, and then that makes audio editing very, very simple. And that, I believe, is HAARP.
Really?
Seriously. And that, I believe, is HAARP.
Really?
Seriously.
As a meteorologist, what have you seen that's led you to believe that there's been some changes in the environment?
I first began to get the inkling that there was something up in the 90s. Because, Joe, forecasting weather is not that difficult.
We've got Ophelia, which continues to intensify just off the east coast of Florida, and that's the big concern.
I was always an alternative media kind of guy. Being in mainstream, I knew how much news was not delivered.
They can make some sort of a sky quake with HAARP.
Yeah, these things are being reported around the world right now.
Imagine a beautiful day. You're staring up at the sky, and then all of a sudden you hear what sounds like the end of the world. A podcast listener sent us this video of what a skyquake actually sounds like. A podcast listener.
And that is my front row street, that is my Moonlight Way, that is my hand, and that is my San Luis Valley, and that is my home video. This video has nothing at all to do with skyquakes. Yet, Joe Rogan and his crew felt that they could make fun of this or create the video which would further their telling of the story. Even if it was a complete lie, they went ahead with it anyway. That's a fraud. There is no audio except for that of my voice over that piece of video.
You can see the Virga now reaching the south.
A podcast listener sent us this video of what a skyquake actually sounds like.
Not much at all. Look at the gusty winds, the cooler air. As far as getting...
Here's what I learned on my journey. What people are calling chemtrails are not the government spraying evil chemicals on you. They look like clouds because they are clouds. The HAARP thing is a bit more confusing. It's terrifying when you're too dumb to know who's stupid. And unfortunately, that's where I find myself. And the only people who really know are the people that are working at HAARP. And none of them are talking. And I wouldn't talk either. And none of them are talking. And I wouldn't talk either. Are the world's governments manipulating the weather and creating huge zombie freak storms?
We shall propose further cooperative efforts between all the nations in weather prediction and eventually in weather control.
There are people that believe that the cloud-like trails you see in the sky behind jets are actually the government spraying evil chemicals. Before I get into how chemtrails supposedly control the weather, I need to find out if there's any truth to chemicals being sprayed. I'm gonna look into this by talking to Kristen Megan, a whistleblower who is formerly with the U.S. Air Force, and she claims that she's seen evidence that shows that this is exactly what's happening.
Part of my job was to approve hazardous materials that were acquired on base, so I started to see memos come down saying, disregard certain things that are called chemtrails, that's just a theory. We're working on weather items here, weather studies. I realized this is the perfect setup. It's very controlled. You cannot go on a flight line and take pictures. If you do, you will be on the ground with an M16 in your back.
I enjoyed talking to Kristen, but she's making some crazy claims.
This is Craig's job, firing chemicals into the clouds in a controversial attempt to modify the weather.
According to the World Meteorological Organization, 52 countries have a weather modification program. Insurance companies, like ones in Alberta, fund cloud seeding projects in order to lessen damage claims they receive.
You could do it for reducing hail. They've tried it on hurricanes to modify hurricanes, to reduce the intensity of hurricanes.
To do that, pilots target clouds full of moisture and eject small amounts of an inert chemical.
Another example is the array of technologies, often referred to collectively as geoengineering, that potentially could help reverse the warming effects of global climate change. One that has gained my personal attention is stratospheric aerosol injection, or SAI, a method of seeding the stratosphere with particles that can help reflect the sun's heat in much the same way that volcanic eruptions do. An SAI program could limit global temperature increases, reducing some risks associated with higher temperatures and providing the world economy additional time to transition from fossil fuels.
Other modification programs, experimental ones done by private companies, done by the United States government, done by states across the United States, are underway. There's more than 50 of them in operation across the United States. There are programs around the world, international corporations, are modifying our weather all the time, and they're modifying it in ways that cover thousands and thousands of square miles. Most of it is chemically altered, so that what happens is that we are putting chemicals, ground-based chemicals that are shot into the air, or chemicals coming from airplanes that change and modify our weather.
Have you ever uncovered any evidence where you have direct government documentation?
They used it in a program called Project Popeye, where the U.S. government flooded out the Vietnamese Ho Chi Minh Trail.
Cloud seeding is one thing, and it's been proven for a long time. It's a fact that they use cloud seeding to try to flood the Ho Chi Minh Trail. But there's a big difference between cloud seeding and actively spraying chemicals like aluminum and barium over our head on a daily basis.
They're talking about controlling weather. I think the debate is over.
I'm not buying what Michael Murphy's selling. I'm even more skeptical now. I don't think he knows enough about the weather to be talking about this, so I'm gonna talk to a guy who does. His name is Scott Stevens. He's a meteorologist, and he is a chemtrail believer.
Hey everybody, you probably watched the Joe Rogan Questions Everything episode of the Sci-Fi Channel that aired this July 31st. They first contacted me back in early July. David Marcus was the senior producer who wrote me the initial email back then, and it was his goal, at least as conveyed to me, to get this topic into the mainstream, to make the debunkers eat their words, not his words, but essentially the concept of what this project was supposed to do. There was so much evidence, it was so clear, so self-evident, as he expressed it to me, that it was a slam dunk. Now, with a project that had that intent expressed to me up front, I wanted to be a part of. And so I let A. Smith & Company, who was the production house for this, have access to what I had.
Uh-oh, here we go. HAARP. Every conspiracy theorist's ears just got a little bit bigger. For those of you who don't know what HAARP is, it's a top-secret military installation. The strange weather patterns, the zombie storms. Even though it's clear that something's going on, I'm not buying that chemtrails are causing all these things. I'm gonna talk to a man next. His name is Mick West, and he runs a debunking website where he clearly and scientifically analyzes all of the problems with the conspiracy theories behind chemtrails. Well, hello, Mick.
Hey, Joe.
Thanks for taking the time to educate us.
Yep.
Are chemtrails real?
No, it's impossible to make a mile-wide trail by spraying powder.
What are your thoughts on weather manipulation in the first place? What are your thoughts on, like, HAARP?
Well, there's really wild speculation about what HAARP could actually do. Like it could, create earthquakes and change the weather. But that's just basically wild speculation. Just because there's HAARP patents that say, you can cause earthquakes, it doesn't mean anything.
The fears of HAARP, you feel, are just based on ignorance.
Yeah.
Mick West put the last nail in the chemtrail coffin for me. He is an Alaska native, and he's been studying HAARP for over 2 decades and writing books about the subjects. Tell me about HAARP. It's an array?
A field of antennas. Right
How
now,
many are in the field?
180.
180.
180, they're about 60 feet tall, and then they have a cross diapole. That's about 45 feet by 45 feet. And these are located not just in Alaska. Now we have them across Canada and Europe, and then the old transmitters in the former Soviet Union, and the Chinese talking about developing their own.
Should I be terrified?
Absolutely. In fact, one that we've been following for a number of years now, biggest radio frequency transmitter ever developed in the world. Designed initially by the Air Force and Navy. Now it's run by DARPA, which does some of the more dark side of military research for weapons applications.
Nick is now telling me that HAARP is being run by DARPA. They're the guys who invent all sorts of crazy weapons that scare the out of you when you go online. And now they have the power to manipulate the weather. What do you think they're doing?
What it's doing is it's literally heating up the ionosphere, which is about 30 miles above the Earth's surface, and then it pushes it out. So what happens then is the pressure systems in that region change, and jet streams moving in that area create a huge downstream effect, and one that cannot be accurately predicted.
So affecting something in one part of the world could potentially affect something on the other side.
Yes. So you may solve, say, a weather anomaly in one place and create 10 others that are uncontrollable. With electromagnetic waves, we could affect earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and weather. And to trigger an earthquake, you basically have energy tied up in a fault zone. But if you could create a resonance signal that allowed that energy to release at a specific point in time, at a specific place, you could then direct it as a weapon.
Wow. So what Nick is saying is that HAARP is sending massive energy into the sky that's being reflected down at the Earth in pinpoint locations, and that it could actually be used to cause earthquakes.
HAARP is like the triggering mechanism for taking the energy within the Earth and manipulating it in specific ways for weapons applications. That's turning the Earth into a weapon.
Woody Norris is a true genius. He has over 80 patents. He's worked on projects for DARPA and the NSA, and he's been studying HAARP and skyquakes. Does HAARP have the capabilities that the conspiracy theories are attributing to it?
I think they're within the realm of possibility. There you go. That's it.
What do you think that is? You think that's HAARP? That's what you think?
Yes, and let me explain why. When you see a bolt of lightning, it ionizes the air, and then when it's finished putting out light, the air molecules crash together and you get this super loud sound.
That's what that is.
Okay, now, if HAARP can manipulate the ionosphere, it can cause sound as a byproduct of what is happening.
Just recording it in the air.
Just coming out of the sky.
What about the potential of using HAARP to create earthquakes? Do you think that that's possible?
If you get sufficient intensity, probably.
Oh, wow. So to generate that kind of sound and to have it come from the sky, you know of no other method?
No.
And the only people who really know are the people that are working at HAARP, and none of them are talking. And I wouldn't talk either, and none of them are talking. And I wouldn't talk either.
I invite you to listen carefully to the sounds you are about to hear. The sounds certainly get your attention, and they're making headlines all over the world.
Strange sounds are being heard around the world. In Sweden, this sure sounds like a trumpet. In Michigan, another trumpet-like sound.
Tonight, investigators are trying to solve a bizarre mystery.
Strange noises heard around the world the last few weeks.
A loud, strange noise early this morning woke up families in St. Paul.
Some people describe them as trumpets. Others called it a long hum. The mysterious sounds were also captured on national TV during a Tampa Bay Rays baseball game.
And the bunt is foul. The count is 1-1.
Now what could that possibly be?
Somebody shut the door. It sounds supernatural.
Several scientists and experts I've spoken with are familiar with. They are still, though, investigating.
If somebody reputable starts talking about UFOs, you can co-opt the person and say, hey, you want to know UFOs? We'll show you the real deal. But not only can you never talk about it publicly, you have to be a debunker publicly.
I'll tell the government right now, tell you right now if you're listening, NSA, CIA, I'm available.
I want to know what the hell is going on.
It's zombie storms. Seriously.